The Terrain of Our Brain, Part 2, all about neuroplasticity. Remember, this video is setting the frame for the work we do in all the next videos and in all the practices we're doing. So remember to give this session the time it deserves and understand the principles we're working with. The principle of neuroplasticity is really, really important because it's the key to you having the freedom to do what you want with your brain and live the life you want. This knowledge, this wisdom is the key because we have to understand why we do what we do and then use that knowledge through the tools we've got as leverage. Leverage is so important. With the right leverage, the right tools, used in the right way, you can literally move mountains. Leverage comes from knowledge, it comes from wisdom, and it comes from right effort. If you've done the course on stress and radical resilience, you'll remember, and it's worth recapping, that an embryonic brain, when it grows, it has millions of neurons in the brain, billions of neurons in the brain. And after birth and during the time in the womb, those nerves are making connections with other nerves. And what the network of the brain is about is not about the size of the brain, it's about the complexity of the network. It doesn't matter how big your brain is. You can have a big brain with minimal connections. It's not going to be anywhere near as good as a smaller brain with zillions of connections. And the estimate is about 1,000 trillion synapses. That's 1,000 trillion connections in an adult brain, where one nerve joins with another nerve. And for the fast traffic nerves, that's where communication happens very fast between key areas of the brain. Those nerves are wrapped in fatty sheaths, and those fatty sheaths are laid down after the child is born. And they're laid down through experience. So the different parts of the brain communicate each other based on the experience that child has as a youngster, as it's growing up through childhood and adolescence. Stress, high levels of childhood adversity, complicate brain development. They prevent this myelination from happening properly, and they prevent brain parks communicating effectively with each other and reduce the overall amount of traffic. They make it harder for a brain to work. Childhood adversity, high levels of cortisol in a developing brain is pretty much brain damage. Now, the good news is that we can work with it. The bad news is it takes time and effort and discipline. So there are these 1,000 trillion synaptic connections, and the base of the brain, the bulk of the brain, is neurostable. Everything remains the same. Otherwise we wouldn't know who we were from day to day. We get up in the morning, we remember our lives, we remember things about what we're doing, about who we are, and we get on with life. Neurostability is the core of that. And on top of that, the brain can change. It can shift and change those connections, and it does. And that process is basically learning. We're learning from experience and making those changes. If those changes are really hardwired in, it takes time. And this is why discipline is important, because what we do then is we repeat practices that enable this self-applied neuroplasticity. It enables us to really focus on making those changes, and that has to come from a place of knowing what we're doing, using the tools to enable that, and actually practicing them, doing them. So we're creating this self-applied neuroplastic experience of changing our brain and learning. Now, children, of course, are in that intense learning state of high neuroplasticity up until the age of about 7 or 8. They are creatures of learning. They learn from everything around them, which is why trauma can be quite so problematic, of course. But they learn all the time from every single example around them. They're copying everything, learning from everything. When we come to about age of 8, we start shifting into a more adult brainwave state, and that intense learning state is less available. To make it available to us, we have to then practice things that make it available. We're going to talk about this later when we get to brainwaves. And we're going to show you how you can start to make that intense learning state much more available so you can live a life of creative purpose. So we have neurostability. We've inherited what we've inherited from transgenerational trauma, from the parenting that we received, from the schools that we went to, whatever they were. And all of them have their problems. There's a lot of work looking at the emotional dysfunction of people who go to some of the better schools. It's not always good. Every school, every culture is training its children to live like the culture says you should live. It's not necessarily focusing on optimal outcomes for the individual to live a life of creative purpose. But from the understandings you've got now, both of trauma and the effects of that on your brain and on your life, and in terms of understanding neurostability and the potential for change and self-applied neuroplasticity, what we have here is the base of understanding of how to create the radical change you want in your life. Start weaving the practices in, and we'll go through these step by step so that you can integrate the knowledge base that you've got here through the tools into your life.